Hey YouTube, how you doing? This is Nate. I hope this video finds you well. Listen, I just want to stop by for a few minutes. Y'all know these uploads are not long, and I want to just talk to you a little bit about something. Yes, you saw the title. You remember when Mama, Big Ma, Big Mama, Madea. You remember when they said, "Boy, everybody ain't lying, girl. Everybody ain't lying." And you know what? They were right. They were right. And I say Big Ma and Medea because y'all, when we were growing up, we call our grandmamas that as a term of endearment. But yeah, let's get right into it. Have you ever met a person who just fails to take responsibility? They just fail to own up and stand in their stuff. What do you But anyways, yes, and you have that person that's always playing the blame game and always throwing a rock. In many cases, that's what happens. They throw a rock and they hide their hands, and they often say that it wasn't my fault. I don't know why she mad. I don't know why he mad. What did I do? Why they mad at me? They always making excuses, and they always passing the blame, and they never take ownership. Maybe at one time we were that person, and prayerfully and hopefully we've changed and we've learned our lesson, because that's what life is about. Life is about looking at ourselves, turning the mirror on ourselves, and fixing those imperfections and fixing those mistakes. So, but I'm sure we all know someone or have met someone who was like that. They never take ownership, and they always blame others and make excuses as to why they didn't either accomplish something, or maybe why they walked away from something, or why they no longer deal with that person or that situation anymore. Case in point, here's an example. Have you ever met someone who had like 6 or 7 jobs in one year? They can, like, it's like they can easily get a job, but they don't stay long. They always complaining and say, you know what, the people didn't like me, or me and the boss wasn't getting along with me, or this happened or that happened. And every time you ask them when they get a new job, what happened to the last job, they always make an excuse. But interestingly enough, they never tell you that they were responsible for anything. 6 or 7 times during that year, you never hear them saying it was my fault, or I messed up, I screwed up, but it was somebody else's fault. And then later on, when they're 65 and when they're 70 years old and they're ready for retirement, they have to work at Walmart or fast food place because they fail to take responsibility and stay on a job. But instead, they went 6 to 7 jobs in one year, making excuses. That's a person who never grows up. Yes, they grow up chronologically, they grow up in age, but they don't grow up mentally. And this is no heat, no judgment. I'm not here preaching. I'm just making commentary on what I see, not only on the YouTube streets, but what I see in the world. This goes on in our families. This goes on in our churches. This goes on. You see this everywhere you go. People are just not growing up. And I don't know why. Why do y'all think people not growing up? Can y'all answer that question? Why do you think people continue to make excuses and never take ownership? Why is that? As full-fledged adults, we got people 45, 50 years old still acting like this. And Paul, when he addressed the Corinthians, he said, when I was a child, I did what? I spake as a child. I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. When I became a full-fledged woman, I put away childish things. I don't whine like that no more. I don't play the blame game. I take responsibility for my own stuff. I take the bull by the horns now. But we still have some people who are operating in that manner. Here's another situation. Even at churches, we got people who go from church to church. They join a church every 2 months because something went wrong, because somebody else looked at me wrong, because I don't feel like the pastor liked me, or maybe the members, they treat me a certain type of way or whatever. And that's always your excuse. every time you go to another church. While this is not a perfect world, but if you feel that way, that's an opportunity to address that. Go to the pastor, go to the members, and call a meeting. Say, hey, I feel like there's a problem, and I could be wrong, but I feel like there's a problem. Something, I just want to make sure we're good. I want to resolve it. We have to start doing things like that. We got to start tackling these problems and stop blaming others and stop running from them. Um, when we see these issues in life, when we see these problems, we should look at them as an opportunity rather than a threat, and rather than running from them, but dealing with them, we'll find ourselves in a lot better situation. Our relationships will last longer. Have you ever met someone, and maybe we were that person at one time? Every time we meet somebody, we cannot maintain that friendship. It lasts what, a couple months or so, because something happens. We go to the next person, something happens, and we'll say, no, that was their fault, it wasn't my fault, I didn't do anything, I was just being a friend. You hear that all the time. But like Mud Deal was saying when we were growing up, like Big Mama was saying, like Mama was saying, everybody ain't lying, girl. Everybody ain't lying, boy. My God. So we got to put the mirror on ourselves. And maybe we don't do that because we might be afraid of what we might see. It's time to grow up and turn the mirror on ourselves and say, it's me, oh Lord, who's standing in need of prayer. There are times, and I was kind of like that a little bit. When I got in the corporate world years ago, they checked me on that. Yes, they say, yeah, we do not shift blame. We do not uh, pull others down to make ourselves look good, or throw a rock and hide your hand. In essence, we take responsibility. Even if there are consequences, take responsibility and say, hey, I messed up, it was my mistake, it was my oversight, I'm sorry. Because you know what, it's better on your job, it's better to take responsibility and own up to that in the beginning, from the onset of that issue, as opposed of just lying and shifting blame and later on letting them find out later. It could, cause a lot much worse on you. It could cause a lot of problems. So just be honest, and just stand in your stuff at the beginning. There are times in my career where I had to do that. I'm like, look, I had to tell the client, had to tell my boss, hey, I had to write up something. Hey, it was my oversight. I did this because I didn't shift the blame. I didn't make excuses. I missed that. I overlooked something. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put something in place to prevent this from happening moving forward. Now, there are a few times where, thank you, Nate. Okay. And then move on. And there are a couple of times where, Nate, this was a really big screw up. We need to be real careful. There are times years ago where I had to have conversations, but, I was honest from the beginning. We didn't find out later on because, if I lied or shifted the blame, maybe it wouldn't have been a conversation. Maybe it would have been termination. You see how that worked? So I know in our corporate world, they really, really value honesty. They really, really value a person taking ownership. Because I remember when I first started, I was surprised. I didn't know that they evaluated on trust and integrity. That's one of the competency skills. At the end of that year, they rate you on how honest you are. If you are a person that operates in integrity, you're a person that doesn't shift blame, you're a person that owns up and takes responsibilities for his actions. And I think once we do that, we'll find ourselves having better relationships with others, because you're the type of person to say that I'm sorry, it was my fault. I think we'll have more stability on our jobs. As I alluded earlier, we'll be able to handle things and not shift blame. We could stay in our churches longer if you decide to. It just benefits you in a lot of areas. So yes, everybody in line. Stop. If that's you, turn the mirror on yourself and look at yourself and say, where am I going wrong? What could I do differently? Even in situation when things aren't necessarily my fault, I always look at myself and say, even though it's not my fault, but if I had not done this, or if I'd said something or not said something, what would the outcome have been? We have to look at the solution. How could I have become a solution to this problem? We always want to be a solution. So look at problems, look at issues as opportunity to grow, opportunity to be a solution. All right, my friend, I just want to come on and get that off my heart. In the meantime, in between time, I want you to be at peace and not in pieces. Till next time, my friend.